divide the cubic polynomial 20w cubed plus 7w squared plus 22w plus 25 by the linear polynomial 4w plus 3. And when doing this, we have to actually consider one way of doing it, which is through long division. So long division is where you have the just like you would have with numbers. We have an outside number and an inside number, something like maybe, let's say, taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 and dividing it by 6. The 6 goes on the outside, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 goes on the inside. 12,344 divided by 6 can be found through long division. You look at the numbers and you figure out how many times 6 goes into 1. It doesn't. 6 goes into 12 twice. Over here, we do the same sort of thing. We try to figure out how many times 4w squared goes into 20w cubed. And ultimately, you're asking yourself the question, what do I multiply 4w by to get 20w squared cubed? And the response to that would be 5w squared. At this point over here, we distribute. We multiply 6 times 2 and get a 12. So over here, we distribute. We multiply the 5w squared by the 4w, and we get the 20w cubed. But we also have to multiply it by the 3, and we get 15w squared. And we line things up so that we can do the next step, which is to subtract. So when we subtract, we have to be careful. We're subtracting multiple terms here. So don't just put a minus sign. We're subtracting both of them. I recommend using a parentheses. And then mentally figuring this out. You can change the signs if you want. I'd rather leave them like they are. And I know for sure the way I have it set up that this is going to cancel 20w cubed minus 20w cubed. And now I have 7w squared minus 15w squared. I'll end up with a negative 8w squared. Over here I end up with 0. At this point, what I do is I drag down the 3 and I revisit the question. So now I'll drag down the 22w and I revisit the question. How many times does 4w now go into minus 8w squared? What do I need to multiply 4w by to turn it into negative 8w squared? And the answer is you need to multiply it by a negative 2w. Over here, there's nothing you can get that to work, so you need to multiply by 0, and you bring down this first 4, you end up with 34, and then you say 6 goes into 34 8 times. And the placement of your numbers up top correspond to where you're at, and at that point, that is not 8. Sorry about that. That is not 8 at all. Wow. Sorry about that. 5. We get 30. Okay, great. So over here, we multiply again. We distribute. So the minus 2w goes times the 4w to get you exactly what you need to match this up and get it to cancel. It gets you exactly minus 8w squared. The minus 2w times the 3 gives you a negative 6w. Remember though, at this point you subtract. So at this point you subtract, but let's employ parentheses to help us out. And just have to be super careful with the negatives. But it's meant to be that the first terms cancel out, and you end up over here with the 4. Over on this side, we end up with the 8w squares canceling out. 22w minus negative 6w. That's like adding 6w. And so you end up with 28w. Okay, at this point you would bring down the 4. So at this point we bring down the 25. We're doing great. And we start the process again. 6 goes into 44. How many times? And the response is 7 to get a 42. 4w goes into 28w 7 times. You need to multiply by 7 to get them to turn the 4w into a 28w. And now we distribute. And so we go and get the 28w from multiply 7 times 4w, and then 7 times 3 is a 21. Once again, though, at this point we subtract. And so here we subtract, but we have to be careful to introduce these parentheses because we're subtracting multiple terms. And then we have the 28w's canceling, and we end up with 25 take away 21, which is a 4. Now at this point over here with the integers, we would put a decimal point and go further, or we can actually consider ourselves stopping there. And what we would do would be, we would say that the answer would have a remainder of 2. Instead of saying, REM 2, the way we can write the answer is we can say that it's 2057, and then we take that remainder and we put it over what we were dividing by, and it ends up as being reduced to be 1/3. And so you could write your answer exactly like that. Technically, there's a plus here. It's written as a mixed number, but to parallel what we're going to do over here, we have a remainder of 4. And so we take that remainder and we put it over what we were dividing by. And that's what we put in our answer. So the answer to this question is 5w squared minus 2w plus 7, and then plus this 4 over the same 4w plus 3. And so let me just draw this separating line here. Okay, and that's our answer to the question. Okay, it's long division, and it works when you're dividing polynomials divided by another polynomial, one by another. This is called a rational function, and so that gets it for you. Now, there is an alternative way, a shortcut way called synthetic division. It's not the best thing to do here, but we can. We'd have to have fractions to do it. So let's just leave it at that. Synthetic division is best done when you have a linear term like x plus 7 or x plus some number. When you have a coefficient in front of the x, it makes it a little more difficult. And so that's an example of long division. Dividing one polynomial by another polynomial, and my attempt to parallel it to long division when you learned it in grade school.